This is easily one of the most recommended videos over the past month on my channel, so we're getting into the rest of season top 17 quarterback rankings for 2024. And I'm giving away 5 free FN hats for when I hit 18,000 subscribers, and the way to qualify to get one is to go down there, drop a like on the video, and subscribe to the channel, and give me your hottest take for week 12 fantasy football. So please go down there, drop a like, subscribe to the channel, and let's get into this first tier right here. Now this is right after week 11, so maybe there's some recency bias in here, but I've got Jalen Hurts actually over Lamar Jackson here. Now listen, with Lamar Jackson, I just want to kind of get this out of the way. Obviously, he had a bad game against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Well, I've been pointing this out all week about Lamar Jackson. Not only is he 1-3 versus the Pittsburgh Steelers, now 1-4 in his career, but he has just not been historically good versus the Pittsburgh Steelers. There's been one coach who has consistently gotten the best of him, and it's actually been Mike Tomlin. He does pretty well against Lamar Jackson and kind of just knows how to bottle him up and how to keep his athleticism at bay for an entire game. So I don't think that Lamar is obviously going to be just that bad for the rest of the year. I just think with Jalen Hurts, when you actually look at his schedule, he's got some really, really big upcoming matchups here. They're major winnable matchups, and everything is basically green as far as the matchups go against quarterbacks in fantasy football. So to me, I just think that with Jalen Hurts' schedule, when you look at the two guys and what they're averaging on a fantasy point per game basis, I just prefer Lamar Jackson just one spot under Jalen Hurts because I think Jalen Hurts just has the better schedule moving forward and just has as much fantasy upside on a per game basis as Lamar Jackson does. But they're both clearly in tier 1 by themselves because when we get down here to number 2, and in the second tier, I've got Josh Allen at number 3 and Kyler at number 4. Now with Josh Allen here, obviously he's kind of a really set in stone number 3 for me. Like if you look at the disparity between points per game between Josh Allen and Lamar, that's why he has to be down here a tier below them, because he's not averaging 23, 24, 25 fantasy points per game. He's averaging 20, and that's a good number. Obviously, it kind of firmly plants him at number 3 for me personally, but I do think that with Josh Allen, there is definitely less of a ceiling there when it comes to him. He doesn't have the weapons that Lamar Jackson and Jalen Hurts do, but obviously he can still get touchdowns on the ground. That dude he looked like Superman on Sunday against the Chiefs, running over, barreling over dudes like linebackers and safeties on his way to the end zone. There's not many Josh Allen. There's no Josh Allen in the world except Josh Allen. He's remarkable, but again, fantasy football, he just doesn't have the amount of points per game as Lamar Jackson and Jalen Hurts do, so he's bumped down a tier. With Kyler, I think this one will be controversial. I will continue to rank Kyler above consensus, I think, because of the fact that we get the rushing upside. Now, when you look at Kyler on a game, like you look at his game log right here, Kyler Murray has definitely been hit or miss. He has not had all just consistently really good games in fantasy. He's the quarterback 9 right now in fantasy football. Well, he's coming off his bye week number 1. And when he hits big. Like he's had several 30-point games this year. He's had 25-plus point games because when you look at the rushing statistics, he's either going to get in the end zone on the ground or he's going to run for a lot of yards. Kyler Murray is always a threat. Now, there will be bust games in there as well. He's produced a couple of them. But with Kyler Murray, I would just prefer to take the shot on the bigger play upside with him, which you can get any single week. It doesn't matter who the opponent is. Then kind of take the chance with a guy like Baker at number 5, who, let me just make this clear. Baker has been awesome. He's been absolutely awesome this year. Baker Mayfield has outperformed my expectations, and I think everybody's expectations for the entirety of the year. Baker Mayfield has been absolutely terrific. He's the quarterback 4, and he's averaging 22 fantasy points per game. It's actually a little bit disrespectful to some that I'm putting him down this low. I can understand where people are coming from. I want to point out a couple things. Number 1, I do think that his matchups are pretty good moving forward here. And I do think that with the potential that he gets Mike Evans back as soon as week 12, that he's going to have another option and he could be really, really surefire and be a consistent 20 to 25 point per game guy. He just doesn't have the ceiling quite as much, in my opinion, moving forward as a guy like Kyler Murray does. I think with Baker, maybe what we saw in week 10 is just kind of a gut call for me, to be honest with you, because statistics don't back this up. I just don't really see him being able to sustain the level of fantasy upside as Kyler does moving forward. Because the Bucs are kind of just on a downtrend as a team. And where the Cardinals, they're leading the division, I think the Cardinals will just consistently play better than the Tampa Bay Bucs have. So I like Baker a lot. He's still in tier number 2 for a reason, but I've got him one spot below Kyler Murray. And honestly, you can kind of rank these guys however you want to. Dropping down to our next tier right here. Again, I think it's controversial. Bo Nix at number 6. I don't think people understand how good Bo Nix has been. First of all, I went through this when I called him a must-start heading into Week 11, and he boomed again. He was fantastic once again in fantasy. He had a 30-point game in a lot of formats. He was taking on the Atlanta Falcons here, and that was a majorly beatable matchup. But just look at his game log, okay? He's had one single-digit game all year, and since Week 5, he's had, basically all 20-point games in fantasy, with the exception of the one versus Kansas City and the one versus New Orleans. He's been outstanding. And again, it's not just because he's good through the air. He's improved a bunch through the air, but it's also because he gets rushing work. He gets rushing work, man. He's a good athlete. And Bo Nix does have some winnable matchups here. I just think that people need to get on board with Bo Nix. This is a really safe play. And it's also a play that has tons of ceiling as well. So for me personally, a guy like Joe Burrow, I love Joe Burrow as well. He's at number 7. Listen, I love Joe Burrow, and he's just coming off a massive game once again versus the Chargers. My problem with Joe Burrow is not Joe Burrow. My problem with Joe Burrow is that I don't think that his offensive line is going to be able to protect him enough. I mean, he gets hit every freaking play. This guy is getting smoked. He just got smoked a bunch versus the Los Angeles Chargers. Every time he throws the ball, this guy is getting smoked. So it's just how many more games until this guy breaks, right? It's not that I'm predicting an injury. It's just this guy has been doing everything for this team. And he's got matchups like the Steelers, and he's got matchups like the Denver Broncos. There's tough defenses on there for him to take on. It's tough, man. It's tough. I love Burrow, and he's been fantastic this year, but I personally prefer Bo Nix just a little bit over Joe Burrow. And I've got Jordan Love over Jaden Daniels at 8 and 9. Now with Jordan Love, this one probably is a little more controversial as well. Jordan Love, here's my deal with Jordan Love. He's averaging 18.9 fantasy points per game right now. And the thing is, he throws an interception, an ugly one, once a game. If you look at his game log this year, not a game has gone by without an interception. He does it every freaking week, which is what makes it so impressive that he's able to rip off major fantasy games. Because he can give you 30-plus point games, and he's done it this year. He's a fantastic player in fantasy football. The only question, again, is how much does he turn the ball over, and does it ever clean up? It doesn't look like it will. And my other problem is, what happens if he pulls his hammy again? He's been dealing with injuries the entire year, and he's got really tough matchups moving forward. He's got San Francisco week 12, Detroit week 14, New Orleans week 16, Minnesota week 17. So it's there's definitely tough matchups on here for Jordan Love, but obviously I really like the player that Jordan Love is. He's got a lot of upside. And with Jaden Daniels here, Jaden came out really hot, and I think he's still going to be a really good player in fantasy moving forward. But there's been a change here, and I think I know exactly what it is. With Jaden Daniels, you guys remember when he was being evaluated for rib injury? He was potentially not going to play a game. I think it was versus the Chicago Bears. Ever since that game, he's just not run the ball quite as well. He has been a little bit more cautious with his running. He hasn't scored a rushing touchdown since week 4. He's not running the ball quite as well. Now, Jaden Daniels is still going to be a good fantasy play because he's actually a good thrower of the football. So he's getting you enough to get you 16, 20, 25-point games still. But he has not had a 25-point game since the week 4 matchup versus the Arizona Cardinals. So again, ceiling just a little bit lower with Jaden Daniels right now, and that's why I prefer a ceiling guy like Jordan Love over Jaden. Dropping down to our next tier right here, we've got Brock Purdy at number 10 and Jared Goff at number 11. Now listen, with Brock Purdy right here, Jared Goff and him are this tier is kind of a collection of all the same. I feel really weird having Matt Stafford inside the top 12 right now, but we're going to get to him in a little bit because he fits like a glove. With Brock Purdy, the one thing I will say is he's been actually really good in fantasy all year. You take out week 1 versus the New York Jets, he's been consistently getting you at least 16, 17 fantasy points with like a 30-point ceiling. Like moving forward, Brock Purdy, his path is actually pretty smooth. You take out Buffalo, maybe Chicago they struggle against, and Detroit in week 17. He's got the Rams, he's got the Dolphins, he's got the Packers. Like, he's got beatable matchups that he can take advantage of. I think Brock Purdy has done really well this year. He's actually run in a couple of touchdowns. He's got more mobility than people give him credit for. Obviously, he's not a runner, but he definitely can get you a rushing touchdown here or there. And then with Jared Goff, like Jared Goff coming off a massive game against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Jared Goff was absolutely fantastic in that game. That's just what he can do. Like, he is completing 73% of his throws this year. It's unheard of. Now, there is a problem here with Jared Goff, is that sometimes he does have a little bit of down games whenever he doesn't like throw for multiple touchdowns. Like, there are games where he comes out and the Detroit Lions just dominate and he ends up not doing that much in fantasy. Only time will tell what those matchups look like. But looking on the screen, it's just like Chicago, Buffalo, Chicago, San Francisco. Like, there's still good matchups on this list that I think will be really competitive, and he'll have to throw all game long. So even like if he doesn't throw for like 30 passes every single week, he's still going to be a good fantasy player because he's so efficient and he's got weapons to take the ball really far. Now again, here with Matt Stafford, I feel really weird. It's actually been a long time that I can remember Matt Stafford being a guy I actually kind of want to play in fantasy moving forward. Like, you look back to since they got Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua back, over the last month, 25.8 fantasy points, 18.9, 10.7, 27.8 in week 11. Like, he's actually been really consistently good in fantasy. Now, the problem is that he does give you the bust games as well. And he does it more so on a consistent basis than some other guys like a Kyler Murray does, right? Matt Stafford, though, with those two weapons back, it definitely makes the world of difference here. And he's got a tough stretch: Philadelphia, New Orleans, Buffalo, San Francisco. But ultimately, like, as long as he's got those two weapons there, I think Matt Stafford's going to be a good play in fantasy moving forward. I also know this for a fact: Matt Stafford is definitely getting more than 0.5 total yards in week 12. That is what his projection is on Underdog. Taking on the Philadelphia Eagles, you hit the higher on this one, you're basically winning free money. So if you're a new customer and you want to get in on this one this week, go down in the comments, grab the link that's there, and use code FFN to sign up for Underdog. When you use code FFN to sign up and hit the higher on the sweat-free projection for Matt Stafford, they'll match your first deposit 50% up to $1,000 in bonus cash. Now, dropping down to our last tier right here. I've got just I think all these guys are in the relatively same tier. I got CJ Stroud at 13 and Justin Herbert at 14 right now. So with CJ Stroud, I think that better days lie ahead. And I'm filming this one before they take on the Cowboys on Monday Night Football in week 11. So obviously I don't know how that one goes. However, I do think better days are ahead for CJ Stroud. Because if you look at what he did with Nico Collins at the beginning of the year, he wasn't great. And that's why he's not inside the top 10 or anything like that. But he was obviously much better. Like, he had actually 25-point upside in him. He had 20-point games in him. Lately, without Nico Collins, he's had one really good game against the New England Patriots in week 6. Outside of that, there's been a lot of disappointment with CJ Stroud. Now, again, I think it's directly tied to no Nico Collins, and I think it makes the world of difference when he comes back. That's why I've got him here at number 13. But with Justin Herbert at 14, this guy I think is on the rise. I think, honestly, I don't think he's ever been bad this year. In fantasy football, he has been bad. But this year with Justin Herbert, I do think that Justin Herbert is starting to play better football because they kind of need him to. They're taking on some tougher opponents where they need to start throwing the ball down the field a little bit more. He actually looked really good against the Cincinnati Bengals, and he's looked pretty good over the last month. You take out, you basically go after the bye. 13.7, 14.8, 24.1, 19.5, 19.8, and then what he did against the Bengals on week 11. He's been really good. So I think Justin Herbert has a lot of bright days ahead of him as well. And then I've got Sam Darnold and Geno Smith above Patrick Mahomes. This one feels really weird. I'll be honest with you guys. I'll get to Mahomes here in a minute. Let me just kind of explain. With Sam Darnold and Geno Smith, these guys have been hot and cold. Now, Darnold has been a little bit more consistent than Geno, but Geno at the same time has been a higher ceiling player than Patrick Mahomes. But both of these guys do have kind of a 25-point ceiling is what we've seen from both these guys over the year. And I think that with Sam Darnold and Geno Smith, they both kind of have some mixed schedules. And with Geno Smith in particular, I don't like him quite as much as Darnold because he basically consistently throws interceptions. Like Darnold does some weeks, but there are some weeks where he plays a little bit cleaner. So I prefer Darnold over him just a little bit because I think that he'll be more consistent than Geno Smith will be for the rest of the year. But I have both these guys above Patrick Mahomes. And the reason why is because with Patrick Mahomes, when you look at his game log, like 120-point game basically, 2 depending on your format. It's not been very good for Patrick Mahomes. Like, the good thing is that it's very consistent. It feels so weird. But I've been honestly talking about this one for a while now this year. I think Mahomes is just kind of a big name at this point in fantasy. I think that's kind of what it is. Like, if you actually just look at his production, it's not been good enough. Like, for his draft capital and what you expect from a Mahomes player, right? It's not there. It's not bad, but it's just not top tier. But again, you look at it just from a game long perspective, like, he's not busting you. He's not killing your week, but he's definitely not providing you the upside that you hoped and wished he could when you drafted him in the 3rd, 4th, 5th round of your draft. It's just not been there this year. So with Mahomes, you just kind of got to be realistic. I don't worry about matchup particularly with Mahomes. That's never really the question. The question is, can this guy give me another 20-point game this year? Because that's kind of what I need. So let me know how your team did last week, and stay tuned for the next rest of season tier ranking video in the next video today.